Welcome back. This week we are shifting over to talk about West Africa. And in recognition of that, I'm wearing my Nigeria soccer jersey that my kids bought for me last year. So I got a couple other African jerseys you might see later in the semester. Anyway, so we are moving chronologically and geographically. We are moving forward in time, and we're also moving around the continent to different places. This week we're dealing with West Africa. Next week we're going to skip over the other side and talk about East Africa. But in all cases, both along the Nile River, Northeast Africa, and this week and next week we're talking about states. State formation around the continent and how it happens. And that's what I have for you here. Now, just to make sure you're aware of this, as I push the wrong button here, excuse me. There we go. All right. Hopefully you can see that. I would say your textbook is pretty good on this chapter. That's not always the case. I'm going to show you some chapters that I think that kind of stink up the joint, but this one's pretty good. So it's not my intention to pile a lot more detail on you here. All right, there's enough detail in here about especially the three savanna states that we're interested in of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. All right. Plus, of course, you have two primary sources this week, one by Ibn Battuta on the Mali Empire, and one by Al-Maghili talking about the Songhai Empire. And then you also have an additional video, short, less than 5 minutes, about Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire. Anyway, so you got a lot of info, right? So that's, as I said, I'm not trying to pile on the details here, of dates and more people and so on. What I want to offer here is an explanation, okay? Because what we see across the continent, as we saw in Northeast Africa, we saw along the Nile, is a succession of states. We saw in Nubia the transition from Kerma to Napata to Merowe, all in the same general region. Why? Right? Key question historians always ask. Why is that? That's what we're looking at here. And of course, to do that in part is to look back at that list that I've given you before of factors behind state formation and success. And if you turn that around, also why they fail. Location, climate, ecological zones, trade routes, partners, those are all things we're going to talk about today. Political organization, spiritual beliefs, economy. Yeah, so those are all things. But in particular, I'm going to look at the three savanna states in West Africa and the reasons why we see their rise and fall over a period of time. All right? Okay. So these are the states we're looking at. We're looking at Ghana, which is around, we don't really know for sure, by 700 AD to about 1200 AD. And it didn't really disappear. It just sort of shrank down to its core area. But then we're going to see it succeeded by Mali, really in the early 13th century to about the mid 15th century. Doesn't sound like it's quite as long, but it's 250 years. That's a pretty good run. And then Songhai rising from the mid 15th century to the late 16th century. Now, let me zoom ahead quickly. The point is that as you look at this map, what you're going to see is these are all roughly in the same area. And they're particularly in the same area if we look at, as we will in just a minute, ecological zones, because they're all in this savanna zone right through here. All right? So, once again, we as historians have to ask the question, why? Why does this happen here? Okay? And really, well, one foundational thing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago is about agriculture. The savanna zone is the zone of agriculture. And because you can pursue agriculture there, primarily with sorghum and millet, you can feed a larger population. And that allows the development of larger centralized states like kingdoms and empires. So that's certainly the case. But that doesn't explain why these states in this place at these times. To explain that, we have to look at three other factors, actually. Anyway, so let me go back here. We're looking today then at three factors. One is environmental change and the impact that's going to have on agriculture in the savanna zone. Secondly, we're going to look at the growth of long-distance trade, which is going to be facilitated by a couple of things, including the introduction of camels in about 300 AD. That's going to be vitally important because of the first mentioned thing there, the environmental change. This area, generally speaking, is getting drier and drier. We're seeing the development and growth of the Sahara Desert. And, well, camels are going to be perfect for traversing that. But we're also going to see the introduction of Islam, as we'll talk about in a couple, well, actually, in a couple different ways, but also with trade. As these societies become Muslim, either Muslim majority or actually Muslim states, they're going to link up with Islamic societies in North Africa and around the Mediterranean and so on, and part of this Islamic world system of trade. So Islam will be a religion, of course, and brings spiritual beliefs, but it also brings other things with it, including cultural ties. And so then we'll see the rise of Islam as it emerges, of course, in the Arabian Peninsula, 632 AD, but it spreads across North Africa very quickly in 100 years, less than 100 years actually, and then down into West Africa by about 1000 AD. So we'll see a Ghana empire, which is not much affected by Islam, but Mali and Songhai most definitely will be. All right, so let's take a look at these factors, starting with environmental change. This is a map I've shown you several times before. You have a similar one in your textbook. It shows these different ecological zones across Africa. You see the Sahara Desert at the top, a semi-desert or steppe, Sahel below that. Then the savanna grasslands are the light green, darker green are forest, and then the darkest green is the tropical rainforest, and so on. All right, so you've seen this. This map shows you the same thing. All right, and I hope you're not watching this on your phone because it's going to be too small for you to see. So this map shows you the same thing as the previous one, except this includes a little more detail. I know I promised not too much detail, but just a couple things. You got to give me a couple things here. First off, it shows you as we move from north to south, from desert to Sahel, to savanna woodland, and finally to rainforest. It shows you where the dividing lines between these different ecological zones are. But it shows you what they're based on. And what they're based on is rainfall amounts. Simple as that. The line between desert and Sahel is 4 inches of rain a year. If you get more than 4 inches of rain a year, you're in the Sahel. Less than 4 inches of rain a year, you're in the Sahara Desert. Just that simple. Okay? Savanna zone, that's going to be very important because the dividing line there, if you're over 16 inches of rain a year, up to 39 inches of rain a year, that's savanna zone. And once again, the savanna zone is the most important one because it's the first zone going north to south here of agriculture. So that means we need a minimum of 16 inches of rainfall a year to pursue agriculture. And once again, that's about half the amount we get here in Chicago. And so you imagine that still looks pretty dry, but it's just enough to grow some crops. All right. So as I said, this map shows us a couple things that we don't have in the previous map. Now the other thing two other things I suppose on this map really. The southern zone of the savanna, the dividing line here is this black line here, which is 1,000 millimeters of rain a year or 39 inches. That's also an important line. For not only does it divide the savanna from the savanna woodland, but it also means that any place south of that line, so any place that gets more than 39 inches of rainfall a year is going to have tsetse flies. Why do we care about tsetse flies? Because they spread disease. They spread a disease called trypanosomiasis or sleeping sickness. It can affect humans, but in this case, the most important impact is it kills large livestock. So any place south of that line, you can't have cattle, you can't have camels, you can't have horses. And those are all very important animals for plows, for transportation, for military purposes, for manure to fertilize your fields, for milk, for meat, all sorts of things. Okay? So people south of that line are going to be limited in their subsistence production, the ways they can live, because they can't have large livestock. Okay? All right. So as I said, this map shows us two things. One, it shows what these divisions between these ecological zones are based on. The other thing it shows us is how they change over time. All right. And this is going to be in the fine details in the upper right corner here. Once again, if you're looking on your phone, you're going to be kind of out of luck. I tried to blow that up and show you here. Here we go. What we see is overall, from, 9,000 BC until now, we've seen West Africa getting drier and drier and drier. Overall, that's true. However, within that time, there has been some up and down. There have been certain periods where it's wetter than normal. And that's what it shows you up here in the upper right corner. Okay, there's a wet period from about 700 AD to about 1100 AD. And then following that in about 1500 to 1630. Okay? But the ones we're going to be interested in is that first wet period from 700 to 1100. Things wetter than normal conditions. But that's going to be followed immediately, not by normal conditions, but by drier than normal conditions. And that's what you see where it says dry periods, 1100 to 1500. Okay? Well, why is that important? Let's go back to the previous map, because effectively what happens is when it gets drier or wetter than normal, these lines shift up or they shift down. If it's wetter than normal, it shifts up. And if you're in the savanna zone and it starts getting wetter than normal, then effectively the savanna zone expands. And what had been marginal land here, in the northern part of it, is now available for farming. However, on the other hand, when it gets drier than normal, this area up at the north here will dry out and it's no longer suitable for farming. It's going to be Sahel. Okay? So what we see during these time periods, as the environment gets wetter at periods and drier at other periods, is the environment actually changes. And that obviously has an impact on how people can live, right? If you're in a savanna zone and you're, a farmer and things start getting drier and drier, you can't be a farmer anymore. Okay? What are your choices? Well, you either switch to keeping livestock or you move. Okay? So this is going to have an impact on things. Now let me show you what that impact is going to be by looking once again at our map here. We have Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Once again, say it with me. So the red one is Ghana. Whoops, come back here. The red one is Ghana. The blue one is Mali, and the green one is Songhai. But they're all along this savanna zone right here. Okay? Now, I hear you asking, if they're all along the savanna zone, then how can environmental or climate change have an impact on moving from one to the other? Wouldn't it affect all of them? Good question. Yes, it would, but in different ways. Okay? First off, what we're going to see here is Ghana. Let's go back to some dates here. Okay? Where were we? There we go. Ghana by 700 AD, and it has declined by 1200 AD. Why? Why is that? Okay? Well, what happens from 700 to 1100 AD is a wet period. And that means the savanna zone expands and you can pursue more farming, especially in this area here. And you can see on this map, this is the Niger River. This is the Senegal River. Ghana occupied the area in between those two, but doesn't control other parts of the river. So it's in an area that's actually fairly dry. We can go back to that map and show you. Oops, come back here. There we go. See where the Senegal River is here on this map. See where the Niger River is here. And Ghana is in between. It doesn't control any river territory, which means doesn't have any access to other sources of water. It's going to be susceptible to this drying out of the environment that starts in about 1100 AD. All right? But once again, it's also going to be more susceptible to that than its successor state of Mali. Why is that? Well, mainly because the capital of Ghana is up here in the north. And it's that capital area that it was well placed for trade, and I'll talk about trade in a minute, but it's not well placed for agriculture. As the environment starts getting drier and drier, they can't support their people, and they have to move out of that area. Okay? That's one of the main reasons that leads to the decline of the Ghana Empire and the rise of Mali. Right? Because Mali will take over a lot of the same territory, but its capital is down here in the south. Right? Plus, they control areas along the Niger River. Okay? So, one reason why we have this transition from Ghana to Mali to Songhai is environmental change. Okay? This transition from a wet period during the height of Ghana's reign, when Ghana was a powerful state, but that's followed by a dry period that hurts the people of Ghana. Okay? And then, therefore, the state will shrink, and they're going to lose the population base that they need, well, to support the state. Right? And then we're going to see them being succeeded by Mali. Okay? Once again, Mali is here in the blue, and Mali is going to have a capital here further in the south, down here, and also control areas along the river. All right? But, you know, it's not going to last forever, and it too, well, back to here, will decline by about the mid-15th century, and that will be succeeded then by Songhai. Why is that? Well, that has less to do with environment and more to do with trade. So let's look at our second factor of long-distance trade. Okay? What we see on this map where these states are trade routes. Okay? These lines through here are trade routes primarily across the Sahara Desert. These savanna states are right here across these trade routes, because most of the goods that are being traded are coming from the south, going north, and from the north to the south. These states don't need to control where the goods are coming from or where they're going. They just have to control the trade route in between the two. Okay? It's kind of like when you're on the tollway. Okay? You can't get off the tollway anywhere you want, right? They make sure you get off someplace where you pay a toll. Same thing here. These actually are, these trade routes, and especially across the Sahara Desert here, are pretty set routes. If you veer off of these, you die. Okay? Because these routes only go through areas where there's water. Okay? So, these states then, once again, don't need to control this whole territory. They just have to control where these routes come out, like the tollway, right? And they do that, and they tax the trade, as governments like to do, right? Okay, just like a sales tax. And that's what supports the state and allows these states to develop the wealth that makes them large and powerful. Okay? So it's the trade back and forth that's going to contribute to this. So what kind of trade do we have? Well, from the north, so from the north to the south, there's a number of things, including salt is going to be very important, horses, luxury cloth, copper, metals are always good, and dates as a food supply. From the south to the north, in roughly this order, gold. Okay? So these first two items, salt and gold, are going to be the major goods. This trade is largely going to be a gold for salt trade. But other things are going to come from the south too, like cola nuts, ivory, pepper, and some slaves. Okay? Islam at this time allows for the enslavement of non-Muslims, and Islam is in the north spreading to the south. So if they're going to purchase non-Muslim slaves, that means they have to come from outside the area of Islam, so further to the south. Okay? So these are the main trade goods going back and forth, just to show you a couple of here. This is a camel caravan carrying slabs of salt. See what looks like those white rocks strapped to the side of the camel? That's salt, which is mined in the Sahara. I think there was a discussion of this, I know there was in the textbook, but the Sahara used to be a large inland sea, actually, that dried up, and as the salt water dries, it leaves the salt deposits behind, dozens of feet deep. And for hundreds of years, it's been mined in various places in the desert. And people in the South then, well, everybody needs salt to survive. You need salt in your diet. We probably get too much, processed foods and so on. Sorry, talking about salt makes me thirsty. But people in the South, people in these empires, though, needed the salt. And so it becomes a valuable commodity. Another good which is coming from the South to the North, I mentioned, was kola nuts. Kola nuts, picture here, there we go. They're nuts about the size of a walnut or so, or a golf ball, a little bit smaller than a golf ball. And they, Coca-Cola was originally made with the extract from kola nuts. It has the caffeine and stuff in it. And these are something that people chew when they're working hard or exerting themselves. But the kola nuts, well, like a lot of plants, are only grown in certain areas. And the dark shaded areas were the areas of large scale production. So they're all here to the south. Okay, so you got to get these goods from down here up north. Okay, and once again, then I'll go back to the map. Ghana, Mali, and Songhai are laying right here across these trade routes. So as you can see on here, cola, gold, and these goods are passing then from the south to the north in exchange for salt and other things coming down. And you're going to see in the reading by Ibn Battuta, take a look in there and look for evidence of long distance trade, right? Because I think you're pretty easy to find it in there. Okay? Now, and this map shows kind of the same thing here. It shows these squares show the sources of gold here, along here, and down here. Right? Now, what this map doesn't show you is the fact is that these sources of gold changed over time. Okay? And they changed because, well, people mined the gold and then the mines ran out and you had to shift to find a new one, right? And looking at this map, if you're looking at this map starting on the far left here, there's these mines right here called Wangara or Bambouk. Okay, those were the first ones chronologically. Then those get worn out, and then they start mining over here. And then those are going to get worn out by about 1400. Then they're going to start mining over here. Okay, this is the second factor. Besides, talked about environment, trade is going to change, and that's going to have an impact on Ghana and Mali. Why is that? Well, take a look at this. Okay, the Bambouk gold fields right here are directly south of Ghana. Okay, so if you're going to mine this gold and then you want to trade it to the north, because that's where your market is, that goes right through Ghana. Okay, all right, so Ghana is going to grow rich taxing this trade, but these mines are going to wear out sometime around 1000 or 1100 AD. And then they're going to shift over to mining over here, right? All right. Why would that have an impact on Ghana? Well, here's why. It looks like these mines are also directly south of Ghana, which they are, and you could still trade up through Ghana, and Ghana could tax the trade and still be wealthy and so on. But there's a problem. There's two problems. One is the environmental change. The other problem is that's not the way the trade routes go. The trade routes from these mines don't go directly north. They go this direction along the Niger River. Because anytime you're conducting trade, if you can transport goods on the river, it's much easier. Also, remember that 39-inch line, tsetse flies, you don't have horses, camels, and so on to carry goods for you. You either put them in a canoe, float them down the river, or you have to carry it on your head. But this trade route down here then, okay, flows along the Niger River. And that's going to be controlled by Mali, not by Ghana. All right, so that's going to be the origin of the wealth of Mali. And the other video I want you to see on the wealth of Mansa Musa, who was the emperor of Mali, this is where his gold is coming from. Okay? Finally then, those mines are going to play out in a couple of years, and they'll be replaced by these mines down here. Okay? Once again, kind of looks like, Mali could still benefit from that, but not so much, once again, because the gold from these mines is going to come up the Volta River, up over here, and that's going to go up toward Gao in Timbuktu. And those are going to be the heartland of the Songhai people, which means when the trade route shifts over here, they're going to benefit from that. They're going to gain wealth, and that's going to allow them to form the state of Songhai. Okay, so we see environmental impact having having an impact on the shift from Ghana to Mali. Okay, and the shift in trade routes and gold supplies also has an impact on the movement from one state to another. Okay, obviously here I'm not a monocausal historian. There can be multiple causes for why something happens. Okay, things work together in history. Anyway, and then so we get some, once again, maps here. There's Mali, and another map showing commodities and trade routes: gold, cola, pepper, and so on. But I want to talk about the last issue here, and that's about Islam. So Islam, as I mentioned already, is going to be a very important force in North and West African history. First, it's going to facilitate trade. Islam really was still is a religion of trade. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, the last prophet of Islam anyway, was a merchant. And integrated in Islam are a lot of rules about how to conduct business properly. So you see, Islam is not just a religion per se. There's no separation of church and state in Islam, certainly back in the day. It's really an entire way of life. And I think you're going to see that also in the Al-Maghili reading, the second primary source you have for this week. And what you're going to see in there, look in that one for evidence about how Islam can be used to help the state of Songhai form and function. Okay? Because what that document is a series of letters. It's a letter from the emperor of the Songhai state who's writing to this Islamic scholar, Al-Maghili, asking for his advice. And most of the document then is Al-Maghili writing back saying, hey, this is what you need to do. Right? And what he's giving him is a blueprint for creating an Islamic state. So that's what you need to look for. So Islam then is very important, once again, for linking this area of West Africa into an Islamic world, which at the time is the much richer and stronger than Europe, and wealthier also. They're controlling the gold supply and so on. But Islam is also then provides a blueprint for creation and functioning of states in West Africa. All right? Okay, those are my explanations with hopefully not too many details. Thanks very much.